when Anglo release their financials, we're going to get some very bad news.
Something fundamentally needs to change.
We got complacent as a country.
So we're entering 2025 with no real growth driver.
Having recorded 4 consecutive quarters of negative growth, this prolonged downturn, primarily driven by a decline in the diamond industry, has led both the Moody's and S&P Global Ratings to downgrade the country's economic outlook from stable to negative. The downgrade raises concern over rising government debt levels and future economic stability. To help us understand exactly what this means, we are joined in studio by business journalist Rabaone Oderile. We talk about an economic downturn, but perhaps before we were even downgraded, we have been hearing about Sekwama, Khasana Madi, so one wonders, from your perspective, is the downgrade from stable to negative comes as a surprise, or it was expected?
I think outrightly the answer is it is not a surprise at all. Not to Botswana, not to the general market of investors. Totally not a surprise to the global community, especially those who observe economic developments across the world. Yeah.
But what does it mean? Because quite often we hear the Moody's rating, the Moody's index, we hear Standard & Poor's global ratings, but what in actual sense does this translate into from an economic perspective, from an investor perspective?
I think the first thing that one would have to acknowledge is that these organizations rely on information that is provided by countries which have subscribed to their services, which Botswana is one of them. So this is why hardly would you hear anyone disputing what they come up with. But back to your question, this is more to do with the health of the economy. It tells you much more about the health of the economy, ability to finance your needs as a country, ability to be able to make promises to lenders that you may be willing to borrow from. This is basically to say the economy is in this state of health when we consider what is happening at any given time, whether they are reviewing the past 4 months or 6 months. It's more about the health of the economy. Is the economy performing to expectations? Can those who, for example, the coupon holders of bonds, government bonds, can they be hopeful that they will get their money once the bond matures without any fail?
Okay. I think it's quite interesting when you talk about the bond markets, because we do know that as we've been talking about an economic downturn, and we keep on citing the low sales or the lack thereof of our diamonds, we've often looked to the bond market to say where else can we get liquidity for us as a country. And we've gone out a few times to the bond market. And I don't know, from my perspective, I'm not an expert, but we didn't fare so well. I don't know if that's also an indication of where we are and what it is that the government that it's relatively new can do in these circumstances.
I think you may have already, you are right. I think in the past 2 bond auctions that were conducted by commercial banks, which were commissioned, of course, by Bank of Botswana on behalf of the state, government did not raise enough cash as it intended, which I think going forward you might not be surprised to learn that even the bond market, those who rely on the bond market are now going for short-term arrangements other than the long-term bonds. So it's to say that we can trust that we can get our money back within a short time, but we cannot tell. Nothing guarantees that we will do well in the long term until we reach such a time when the mainstay of the economy, begins to perform well as it did, which is the diamonds. Once we get back to that level, I think we can only bank on or be hopeful that the decision by government to come up with a new economic architecture will perhaps make a big change going forward, which is make the economy generate more revenue outside diamonds, make the economy be able to produce more of what we can sell outside and get foreign revenue, because that is what is needed in any country in order to complete that which is needed to say the economy is in good health.
I think the question, one begs the question, given the state of where we are now, what we understand of the diamond market with lab-grown diamonds and many other players coming into the industry, should we be having a conversation centered around what we are able to do with our diamonds to get back to where we are? Should they still form part of the mainstay of the conversation when we talk about moving forward?
I'm on the side of those who say that, who don't believe that diamonds will ever go back, at least not in the short period of time, go back to their the position where we know them. We've always known them to be the mainstay of the economy. I think there's a very good aspect of the issue to raise, to say that shouldn't we now be focusing on other industries or economic sectors that we can say that these are going to be the second mainstay, if not the mainstay, you know, a cocktail of mainstay of the economy outside diamonds, without including diamonds, but knowing that diamonds will still be most important to the economy. But perhaps we should be. I like the fact that the pronouncement that has been made so far by government of diversifying the economy appears to be more of something that you can say is going to happen compared to the 1998 or 2003 when we began hearing during the presidency of Rabaone when they talked about diversifying the economy, but nothing practical was happening. Today I sit here with you and I can tell you that at least we have seen that the hemp industry, if it is going to happen, as government is saying, the legislation, they're already in progress with enabling or producing a legislation that enables investors to come on board. I think if it, the way they presented it to the public, it appears that it can also make a difference. But here's the other thing. The other thing is that the capital, human capital, that has been sustaining diamonds can also become something that Botswana can benefit from going forward, because they can be sent outside into the world and bring more, or become experts in those countries and bring more of a clout to the country, to be known that it can produce, contribute human capital to the world.
Given the strategies or the plans that you've put forward in terms of what it is that the government intends to do moving forward to ensure that we are back on a positive trajectory, perhaps the question should be, as we speak now, with these ratings, with this downgrade, what does it mean in terms of government being able to take care of its priorities, its mandate? What does it mean for me as a citizen in terms of either opportunities or challenges that this present?
I think here's the thing. When we are in tough times, entrepreneurs find an opportunity. I mean, you could call it bona fide entrepreneurs will find an opportunity to emerge and produce more of what the country needs. And I think this is the time that we're going to see a lot of proper entrepreneurs, genuine entrepreneurs rising. But you talk of what the government can do. At the moment, you have seen that the government is much more into borrowing, but that is not sustainable, of course. You cannot keep on borrowing without producing. You can borrow to use money for production purposes. In other words, to jumpstart other sectors of the economy that can produce and be able to enable you to repay. Look, the reopening of that mine with new investors into that mine is also adding into the hope that the country can have. The recovery, as it has been said, although not yet specifically pointed out, that there is a high grade of copper that has been found in the BCL mine that has been taken over by a new company. These are also pointers to where we want to go. Unfortunately, it still takes us back to where the country relies on mining than in other sectors that we should be relying on. One, manufacturing. Secondly, farming. Remember, manufacturing and farming, if they become, if they thrive, this is where you're going to see a lot of people being employed. And when more people get employment, as they said in government that at least somebody should get 4,000 pula. If you get that, it means that it's not only the GDP that will grow, it will also grow the per capita income will grow. And when you want to go further beyond per capita income, you can go to triple P, which is the purchase power parity, which is the money that you have as a citizen. What's the value of that? What can you do with that money that you have? If it's 100 pula, what is that 100 pula able to bring you? Can it sustain you at least for a day? Yeah.
I think sometimes, I think it was the third quarter of last year, the Bank of Botswana governor did allude to the fact that some of the issues that we have within our economy are structural. We can talk about economic downturn as a result of diamonds not being bought, but there are some structural issues within how our economy is set up. When we find ourselves here, which I think many countries would go through the ups and downs, what opportunities are there for us as a country to then say, how do we reconfigure our economy such that we are not just looking at, you've just said it, mining. We are indeed able to push that diversification, because we've been talking about it since 1998.
You know what, I wish I had an answer, because many people have always been saying that we have come to the point where we know that what it takes to get our economy to no longer rely heavily on diamonds. We need to diversify it. But here's the question: what's making it difficult to be diversified? And they also pointed out that structural problem. It's not the first time that that weakness has been said. I think a lot of economists, especially those who deal with specialize in macroeconomics, have said that many times. Now the question is, what can we do? What can we do to reach a point where your company and my company can do business and thrive without relying on government? That is the answer that we're all looking up to. But I think the way the Vice President keeps on saying it, it gives the hope that perhaps we are getting into a new era where diversification would happen. And I always give examples of what has been put in place. And in economics, they say it's a non-performing asset. I always give an example with what was secured in the dry port that was secured in Namibia. It was to make sure that Botswana improves its interaction with the global community, but most importantly, that it makes it easy for investors in Botswana to transport their goods cheaply, because it was realized that relying on the route from South Africa is going to be expensive. But what is happening then? What can we do? It means that we can explore fully all value chains in every industry that we pursue. But remember, there is no country in the world that is doing well which is not, one, industrialized. Most of countries that are doing well today are industrialized countries. And what are we doing? How far are we doing in industrialization of the country? Unfortunately, we cannot report anything that is impressive. But the policies are there. Most of the time, what is happening, what is not happening, is the actualization of what the policies intended.
Okay. I think you and I have just really been talking at a macro level. I like that you introduced the word macro level. We've just been talking at a macro level. Let's just talk about the ratings themselves and what they actually translate to from a bread and butter perspective, from a you and I perspective. Which
is very important, because my as a journalist, my position is always that bring issues to the bare minimum so that almost everybody understands what it means. We are in a point where a lot of Botswana should know that when the Moody's give out reports, they are simply saying you should not expect any improvement of income in your pocket because of the situation. In other words, what I'm saying is that a lot of us should be able to talk economics and get to know what it takes to build an economy of Botswana, and to know that what you are doing, we have been assigned to do as an employee. If you are not going to do it fully, it means that you are becoming one of the weakest links in the production of a good economy.
Yes.
So in short, it means that we are getting our ability to purchase, the money that we have is losing value slowly and slowly if the economy is not going to improve.
Okay. With the economic meltdown of 2008, there was a lot of talk around belt tightening. Is this a point where we should begin to talk about belt tightening, where we talk about improved efficiencies, making little go a long way, and who should be leading those type of conversations?
I think I always look up to a situation where we will see transformational leaders in the private sector and in government, turnaround strategists who are able to emerge, ensure that even when a company is at the performing below average, if you find that leader, he can turn around that company using the same staff, the same workforce. I think one of the weakest points in Botswana is that we have a very small pool of effective leaders, both in government and in the private sector, where profits is the main thing. So this is why I think because of that small pool, people who are in leadership positions have become so comfortable because they know that there isn't much competition. They will retain their jobs, no matter how pathetic they can perform, or the companies that they lead are performing. So no targets. If no targets are there, it means that, as they always say, and I don't like saying this, but if you have got no targets, what you are working towards, it means that you have no pressure at all. It means you are simply fulfilling an obligation of coming to work every day. But there is no target that somebody will say to you, you failed to deliver. Again, I want to put my head on the block and say it appears that what the new government is talking is promising, but the downside of that is that the promises may also eventually become their downfall, because if they promise and then they don't deliver after people have believed in their promises, then eventually that is going to be their downfall.
It's quite interesting when you talk about promises and being able to deliver. You mentioned that these ratings essentially are saying don't expect any improvement in your pockets. Essentially, if I'm here hoping that there would be a salary increase of some sort, chances are it's not going to happen because of where we find ourselves. From a prioritization perspective, if you are CFO of a company called Republic of Botswana, given where we are, education and what needs to happen in the education, health, what needs to happen within the health sector, what do you prioritize? What do you leave behind while we venture into these very dangerous territory, for lack of a better word?
I think the main thing at the moment is to ascertain where we are weak in terms of efficiency. Because even before distributing funds, to say now as a ministry we have so much, the most important thing is to be able to identify where we lack in terms of delivery, efficiency. And if we can deal with that, then we can hope for anything different, better. But if there is no identification of what has always, like I said earlier, if there are no targets, if we knew the target of this ministry or this company, we will know that we failed drastically in the past financial year, because we had set ourselves to have achieved ABC. Here's the thing: the vice president says, you may have picked this, that they are going to change public enterprise. They're called SOEs. Totally change them to make sure that they are they add input in the development of the economy. In other words, they inject value in the economy. Look at some of them are SOEs, some of them are outrightly government companies like BDC. This is an organization that has been set up primarily to industrialize the country. And I think you remember that last year they relaunched or launched 3 companies in Lobatse. If we say, as you were asking, what is priority right now? It is the producing companies owned by government. It is the ministries that are enabling private sector to deliver. So there are ministries whose role is simply to make sure that private sector delivers, like the Minister of Communications. You might not hear the minister of that ministry appearing quite a lot in the media, but in this 21st century, they are the mainstay in developing an economy.
In driving that digital transformation that we also talk about.
Absolutely.
Okay. I suppose as we come to the end of our conversation, perhaps just to, again, I want us to really talk to the bread and butter issues, because quite often when you talk about the ratings and whether we're being downgraded or upgraded, we always wonder what is the hullabaloo about, because we don't know these organizations. I recall sometime last year, our neighboring countries, if you remember, even politicians were saying they can take it down, but we'll bring it up. And you wondered if it was just politicking or if it was people not necessarily understanding the meaning and the impact of what these ratings really mean from an investor confidence, from a government being able to take care of its mandates and its people.
I think I did understand their frustrations. I understood the context in which they were coming from. Unfortunately, I don't think they have got any power to do anything because the inflow of investors is coming from the West. So what they say about your country, what Moody say about your country, investors coming from their own backyard will believe in them more than you. But I mean, you see, these people are concerned with as I said earlier, the health of the economy. They're not concerned about how much you have in the pocket. No, they're just concerned about the GDP. And they don't even go further to per capita income. No, that's not a big deal. The big deal is, can this country, can this company called the Botswana Republic be able to pay its debts? Can it service its debts? That's number one. Number two, can investors coming into this country make decent returns on the investment? And for me, if the diamonds immediately tomorrow comes up and do well, you probably will hear that they have expressed confidence in the economy.
Okay.
I would say this, and going forward, you probably will support me on this. If a lot of Botswana become aware of what it means by one industry shouldering the economy, I think they will begin to know that it is not a safe going forward. Like Daba has said, going forward, it doesn't guarantee our next generation that they will do well economically if we bank on diamonds only.
Thank you so much, Rabaone Oderile, business journalist, speaking to us about the downturn of our economy with Moody's and Standard & Poor's global ratings having downgraded Botswana's economic outlook from stable to negative. Of course, speaking to the fact that we can't put all our eggs in one basket. It's no longer prudent nor wise for us to be looking to diamonds and diamonds and diamonds alone, given the state of where we are as a country.